Hi guys. Okay, continuing with the axe files. We've talked about the hatchet, we've talked about the hand axe, we've talked about the various axes. Now let's talk about something that still fits into this terminology, the tomahawk. Now my first video I brought out my old tomahawk. This is the one that I carried in living history for nearly 30 years. And it's hand forged, and you see the holes in it. It was originally that it was longer and it made an arrow point, but it's been worn down from use over so many years. And it's wrought iron with a steel bit in it with this round eye. This is typical of the type of tomahawks that you saw along the frontier in the early part of American history. A tomahawk was what most people had for an axe. It was the mass produced, because we don't talk about this in history because we assume everything's the way it is. But we've come up in the Industrial Revolution. At the time of the colonies in America, the colonies would gather raw material, cotton, tobacco, turpentine, all kinds of raw commodity, and that would be sold and shipped back to England. England then would turn it into other materials and ship it back to America as a finished product. So I would grow cotton here in America. It would be shipped as bales of cotton over to England. It would be turned into cloth and turned into shirts and sent back to me for me to buy with the money I got from selling the cotton. That's how this exchange conveyor belt worked. And they did not really want anybody in the colony to be able to manufacture the finished goods. And they kind of frowned on that a lot. The other thing is, we believe, well, blacksmiths were everywhere. But let's look at some reality here. Along the East Coast and in the colonies, blacksmiths were common because they had resources. A blacksmith is a guy with a hammer and an anvil. He makes all of his own tools, but he needs three things. He needs a reliable source of fuel, coal or coke. 2, he needs a reliable source of metal. He's not a foundry guy. He's got to have metal to start out with, and that's a totally different purpose. And 3, he's got to have the means of transporting this. So how expensive is this hatchet going to be when I had to pay a premium for the coal to heat the forge and a premium for the raw steel to ship 1,000 miles for me to be able to make a tomahawk? How much do you think I'm going to charge you for that tomahawk? Yeah. Better idea. I'll make the tomahawk in Pennsylvania and I'll ship it to Illinois. How about that? And that's what they did. You see these heads being made along Europe at first, and then later they began being made along the East Coast in the industrialized centers because they had the resources and they had the opportunity there to make it, and they could mass produce them relatively. And then that would be then shipped as a finished head to out there into the wilderness, into those forts and things. Because I can make a handle. I can't make this part, but I can make a handle. And that's one of the reasons that round eye was so prevalent out there, was because in the field I can make one of these. As far as if this snaps tomorrow, I'll find a dead hickory, or I'll find a green tree, and I'll make me a handle for it that I can put in a matter of minutes. I can use the head to make the handle. And then I'll start looking for me a piece of hickory that I can harvest and sit there by the fire at night, take my knife and carve pretty and make a pretty handle, because it's just one long taper. As long as it goes through the eye, I can just start it in the eye and keep cutting till it gets all the way down, leaving that last inch, and then beat it in there tight. I can also take it off by hitting it and it will slide down. That made this very, very viable out in the field, and it still is today, as the tomahawk is still a very viable hatchet, but it's sort of a hybrid. Remember when I talked about what a hatchet was? It was a light-duty limber processor like that, but it had a short handle. A Tomahawk has a light head but a long handle. That gave it greater power and reach, because now I can get a lot more power. I can actually perform like the hand axe of the heavier head because I've got more momentum with the handle. So I can actually split some bigger stuff if I need to. Disadvantage, I don't have a hammer pole on that. That's round. And if I go to pounding tent stakes, you know I'm going to, that's what happens. See, it's kind of flat up there. That's years of pounding tent stakes. This eye stops being round and it starts being kind of wonky shaped. And you got to just beat handles in and out of it. That's the idea. But it has a good 3-4 inch, usually 4-inch bit cutting edge like the hand axe. It's got the weight of a hatchet, but it's got the length and power. And that's where these came about. Now there's still the modern equivalent of this. And there's many of them available. This one is a cold steel that you've seen in several of my videos. Now the advantage of the design is this comes out easy. I can fabricate this if it breaks. One good hit and it comes out. Now this one has an actual hammer pole, and I still got like 2.5 going on 3-inch cutting edge. But the fact I can take it off like this means I can use it to do actually like an ulu, cutting meat or something if I needed to, which again, an axe is never going to do the job of a knife. But if I got nothing else, I'm not helpless. I can do it with this. Simply put it in place and a couple of good taps and we're back in business again. And so if you're looking for a light tool to carry, I recommend a hatchet. I also recommend a tomahawk, because they're very quick. Now, the disadvantage to a hatchet, putting the head back on in the field, is more difficult. Now, as you remember, we spoke about the hatchet. This is a marble style. I don't know how well you can see it, but that eye, it actually has these internal pieces of metal ridges that grip it. So it's not a flat piece going in. It's actually kind of scalloped where it's forced in there, and then there's that big old steel bit into it. When you look at the hand axe in the end of it, there's the wedge and then that ring hammered into it. That means it is not impossible to replace that handle in the field, but it's going to be a chore. I can do this in probably 15 minutes and have a usable, not perfect, it'll probably be green handle, but I'll have then the opportunity to look and find. And so if I was going to be dropping back into, I don't know, the wilds of Alaska for 6-8 months, that would be my choice. Would be a tomahawk. I love my axes, but realistically, the same things that had faced our ancestors in the 1700s and 1800s will be facing me. If the handle breaks for whatever reason, can I replace it in the field? I can, a tomahawk. I cannot easily an axe. Could I? Yeah, but it's going to be a lot of work. And I'd rather do this. This would be quick and easier. Plus the fact I can easily take this head off to use other ways. And that gives an advantage. It also has a good hammer pole for striking and pounding tent stakes and etc. And that edge is usable in many different ways. I can use it as a fleshing tool if it's not terribly sharp, dragging it down, you know, deflesh and etc. I can use the back edge back here as a flint striker if I want to hone it or something like that. And I have actually seen this underside used on a fleshing beam before. Lots of uses. So a tomahawk has distinct advantages in the field. And finally we come to the last thing I want to talk about in the Axe Files series. And many of you want to know why I didn't include that to begin with. Well, because it was a little different, okay? I talked about the conventional stuff straight away of the hatchet, the hand axe, the camp axe, the double bit axe, and the full-size axe. Then I went into the tomahawks. But to me there is another hand hatchet that does many other things as well as that. And that's a kukri. To me, a kukri, a good, thick, real kukri, excuse me, that's been made properly, can do the job of that hatchet. even to the point of being that hand axe. I can do it with this. I can split with this. I can make wedges with this. I can hammer sideways with this. But I also got a knife edge right here that I can use as a straight knife edge. I also got a point that I can grub and I can dig with. There's many, many uses for this. But in my mind, this is not a knife. This is a hand axe. This is a hatchet. This is a chopper. This is designed for me to cut and split and delimb and all those topics that I just talked about. I can do with this easily because of skill level. It's still a wedge. The back is much thicker than the front, and the back of these this one is was made by Gurkha House, or I believe it's called Kukri House now, and was handmade in Nepal from a leaf spring of a Mercedes-Benz, and the back end of it is near about a 1/2 inch thick, and it's a full taper all the way to the edge. The back edge is a hardness of 25. The edge is a hardness of about 65. A file skids on it. So once you get it sharp, she holds it, and that soft back edge flexes. So now I've got a tool that I can do chopping, splitting, all of the above, and this one has served with me at least 20 years. I've lost track, to be honest, guys. I have to think back to the 80s to remember when I didn't have this knife. You know, it's a knife, it's a hatchet, it's a chopper, and that's the mindset. So, in conclusion of the Axe Files, and I could go on and spend hours on each one of these back here behind me. Each one of them I have carefully selected for my environment. But what about your environment? That's the difference. If you're in the lower parts of Florida where you don't have any big trees, it's just scrub and stuff like that, Kukri, what I use, or that Tomahawk would be fine. Not a lot of weight, a lot of reach, a lot of doing. The hand axe would be fine for that. What if I was up north, you know, like Michigan, Maine? Well, then the bigger axe is probably going to be necessary because your winters are long and cold and you need to be able to split firewood for a winter camp. Bust something up, get something down in deep snow. Yeah, the axe really shines then. How about out west where I'm out in the wide open stuff? The hatchet or tomahawk would probably serve you just as good as anything else because you're just taking scrubbed stuff down. The size of what I'm doing and the job that I'm performing should dictate the tool that I'm carrying and why I want to carry that tool. Because ultimately, from our ancient ancestor that picked up a rock because he found that their fingers or teeth just weren't getting it done and began beating on whatever that was sticking up, that coconut husk, that stub or whatever, and discovered, you know, this is a little easier. We've come all the way to this point. We're just one step removed from that ancient person on how we harvest the trees or harvest the bush or delimb. It's just a little more sharp, a little better focused, a little better balanced. But ultimately, he got the job done, and so will you, as long as you use some basic common sense and use the right tool for the job. Hope this gives you some ideas, guys. Please leave any questions or comments below. And as always, thank you for supporting my channel. Until next time, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.